Welcome to the Talking Maths in Public podcast, a community podcast for members of the Talking Maths in Public network, which is a UK organisation bringing together maths communicators of all kinds. My name's Katie Steckles, and I'm a maths communicator and member of the Talking Maths in Public team. In this podcast, we'll be hearing from various members of the community, sharing their maths communication projects, recommending their favourite bits of MathsCom, and discussing how we can communicate maths engagingly and effectively. In this episode, we'll be hearing from Ben Orlin, who's written several popular maths books and likes to get his readers involved in the process. We'll also hear from Max Hughes and Harry Krishnan, who both run hands-on maths centres in the UK under the umbrella of MathsWorld. To see links to the things discussed in this episode and find more episodes, you can visit talkingmathsinpublic.uk/podcast. First up, I spoke to mathematician with bad drawings Ben Orlin about his career in mathematical writing. Okay, so I'm talking to Ben Orlin, maths celebrity, maths teacher, maths author.
Celebrity was a way fancier word than I was expecting. I think like maths guy,
yeah,
like a guy,
maths human,
related in the orbit of maths. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you're. I guess people may have heard of you from what was originally a blog, Math with Bad Drawings, which has been going for approximately 1 million years now, I believe.
That's right. No, yeah, it originated back in the ancient days when a blog was sort of like a live cultural object. A thing that people actually did. Yeah, so yeah, blog, and then since then it's been a series of books has been my main focus.
Yeah, and I guess, so one of the things we wanted to talk to you about was your kind of most recent book, but I guess this is not the first one you've done, so your first one was kind of the book of the blog, I guess, the actual Math with Bad Drawings book. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it was sort of the probably half the material or so of my first book that I just called Math with Bad Drawings came from the blog, and a lot of it kind of repurposed slightly to make more sense in book format.
Yeah, and I think this might be this. If people have seen bits of your content from that, it's kind of just like fun little drawings, cartoons, observations about kind of maths and about how people interact with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like the child of like a college humor magazine and a math textbook that was mostly raised, I think, by the College Humor magazine. It seems like the math textbook gave some genetic material, but then maybe didn't have such a role in the upbringing of this book.
Yeah. I sort of feel like the target audience for that kind of stuff was kind of me, that I would see these things and be like, this is brilliant. I love this nice observation, this witty comment about how maths works. But I guess, were you sort of pitching that at a range of people?
Yeah, I think my thinking about audience has always been very almost deliberately naive and unsophisticated. So I think probably like to a large degree, like it's good to see you, Katie. Like I want Katie to like my stuff. So I think probably to a large degree, that's like what I've been doing is trying to make something that is going to amuse Katie. And then I don't know. Yeah, I guess when I did the book, to some extent, when I was doing the blog back in the day when blogs could, sort of like a post could go viral on Facebook, you could just sort of see when something resonated. And weirdly, when it resonated, it would resonate with lots of audiences. It would be, I think like an early post I did, I guess, one that wound up in the book is, and was pertinent to later work I did, was this game Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe, which I sort of stumbled across. It wasn't a game I invented, but I stumbled across some people playing it, thought it was cool, wrote up the rules, and people loved that. It just clicked with a lot of different audiences. Like teachers liked it because they could play it with their students. Students liked it because it was a fun game. Parents liked it. Mathy people liked it because it was sort of this interesting combinatorial object you could explore. And so I was sort of looking for those things. I don't know, I guess in Hollywood, these are like your 4-quadrant films. I don't actually know what the quadrants are.
Yeah.
Simply in Hollywood, they've got some secret 2x2 grid of something. But so I think early on, that's what I was looking for, was just things that clicked, that had a kind of virality to them. I think over time, I figured out who my audience was, and it was a weird hybrid audience. I did a poll maybe 5 years into my blogs, at 2018 or so, and got something like 1,000 responses. And it was broke down pretty neatly, where maybe about 20 to 25% of my audience was students, like current high school students or undergrads. 20 to 25% was teachers, mostly, middle school, high school, undergrad. Another quarter was sort of people in software or tech kind of fields, but who had some older relationship to mathematics. They'd gotten a degree in physics or something, and they still liked kind of staying in touch with the subject. And then another quarter were totally miscellaneous, random people who who sort of didn't have any relationship to mathematics, but just kind of enjoyed the blog or enjoyed dipping into it, had their own idiosyncratic reasons for reading. So I think somehow I pigeonholed myself as trying to stretch myself across all four of those audiences.
Yeah.
Which I don't totally recommend for other people trying to do math communication. I think trying to sculpt out like who is your crowd and then serve that crowd makes more sense. But that was just sort of the place I found myself in, was with a weird hybrid audience.
Yeah, and I guess like this is often the case with stuff online that, if you're like going to a building where there is a room full of people and that they've all come there because they go to the same school or they've turned up to this event and they bought a ticket, like you've got a sense of who's in the room and you can even get a show of hands or whatever. But online, you kind of just put stuff out there and the audience is whoever ends up reading it. And, the way that things are discovered has sort of changed over time. But in general, if someone sees a thing that is, a funny thing that's got some maths in it, they will send that to other people they know that enjoy funny things with some maths in, right? So it's kind of, it spreads organically in some ways, and it also shows up in places that people go looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think probably the experience of math popularizing or just sharing math publicly is complicated and made strange by the gravity of school math. Like it's sort of like so much of the way people interact with math is through school. It's like you spend this decade in math classrooms. And so you sort of have this army of mini math evangelists out there called teachers, of whom I've been one. I'm, currently teach at different levels. And so, yeah, whereas I think if you're popularizing other subjects, maybe this is true of any school subject, but a lot of science communication seems to exist to me more in like separate fun science-y spaces. There's the universe of podcasts and YouTube channels and things like that are, I'm sure teachers use them, but it feels like it stands almost free from the educational structure. And in mathematics, it seems like they're braided together in a much stranger way, or at least that's been my experience in my career.
Yeah, I sort of know what you mean, that people very strongly associate maths with school, because for a lot of people that will be the main place that they encountered or interacted with it. When that classic encounter you have where you meet someone, you say you're a mathematician, they say, oh, I hated maths at school. And I'm like, what did you think of it not at school? Like, how have you enjoyed maths in the rest of your life? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard for people to answer, though. I think in a way that you can be, someone can say, like, I hated reading books in English class, but I actually do like reading these other books. Or like, I hated science class, but I like gardening, or I like, nature walks or something. You're not going to be like, well, I hated taking integrals in school, but actually I love taking integrals in my own daily life.
Well,
there's something about it. Yeah, maybe it's that the everyday experience of mathematics are too buried or scattered. Like we don't sort them as mathematics. We don't recognize them as mathematics.
Well, yeah, there's that sort of classic category error that as soon as you say maths, people are thinking arithmetic, or they're thinking, doing your taxes, or things that are not like fun, enjoyable parts of life or culture. But I guess like to segue nicely into some other things that you've done, like one of your books has been about games, right? Maths and games, and that's something that people very much don't necessarily associate with maths. It's just a fun thing that you do with your friends, but you've managed to put together an entire book, which, if I'm being honest, is absolutely massive, and I can't emphasize enough how big this book is. If you've ever seen a copy of Ben's book about maths and games, it's huge, right?
It's physically large. It's funny. This is particularly, I find anybody I talk to in the UK has this response. I think it's maybe just like you guys are just a little more pressed for space out there, and you're like, this is gonna take up half my garden.
Yeah.
Like I can't. What am I gonna do with this book? It is a physically large book.
Do we know for sure that it wasn't they just printed the UK edition like in centimeters instead of inches, or some kind of error?
That's probably what it was. Yeah. Meters, I think. Yeah. The book is actually 9 meters by 11 meters, so it takes up. You sort of want a school copy more than a private copy. So the games book, right? The pencil and paper games. And I think, I sort of, my editor had asked me, because the opening chapter of my first book is about that game, Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe. And that was sort of a popular chapter. People liked talking about that. They liked the game. And so my editor asked me, could you do a whole book of these? And I was like, well, that one game, I kind of have to stretch it to make that into a book. So I probably got to find some other games.
It's got layers to it, but not that many.
Right. I could say a lot about it, but maybe not 300 pages. So, so I got to do a very fun couple of years of research of just searching around and trying to find lots of pencil and paper games. And I had a question as I was finding them of like, is this a math game, with a capital M, capital G, or is it like a vaguely mathy game? Like where's the line between your traditional board game and, or your classic tabletop game and a game that qualifies as math? And And I decided that obviously there's no principled line. So if I just put them all in a book and on the cover I wrote math games, that kind of made them math games. That that sort of qualified. And because a lot of these games, they're strategy games. They're games that involve a little bit of randomness sometimes. But there's lots of mathematical structure in each of them. And so, are they narrowly, exclusively math games? Probably not. But there's certainly mathematical thinking one does in those games.
Yeah, and like whether it's like the structure of how the game works is something that you can then do some fun combinatorics on, or think about, the maths behind that, or the symmetry or the patterns or whatever, or whether actually playing the game, you're making these decisions, you're using, mathematical thinking skills to decide what your best move is going to be, whether there's a probability involved or some kind of, logical like game theory, if I do this, what's the other player going to do sort of thing. But yeah, I think because they are all of these just sort of pen and paper, you don't need any equipment, you just maybe some coins or something, but you don't need anything to play them. So that I think there's a lot of appeal in that it's the sort of thing that, if you're on a long train journey, or, you need to entertain a child at short notice, you've got,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't have as many trains in the US. So I think of it as like the waiting in the restaurant for the meal kind of book. But yes, but ideally we would have more trains around here, and then people could be playing the games in this book on trains. I think that's right. I think math is this federation of lots of different topics. So there's lots of different things that can feel mathematical, and still have quite a different flavor, right? A game where that's very geometric, where you're kind of drawing shapes, is going to be very different in flavor than a more numerical game where you're trying to get numbers that add up to 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
But they all have kind of a mathematical aesthetic or a mathematical spirit.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if the fact that it is kind of very deliberately those very approachable, low-level pen and paper things has sort of helped with the appeal of that. Because, if you had a book that was like serious mathematical games for absolute, math nerds or whatever, that you wouldn't necessarily reach as many people as if you've got something that looks like it's quite approachable, and it's got your kind of drawing style where it's all kind of cartoon stick figures and, hand-drawn things on the cover. And obviously it's massive, but that kind of, people might look at that and go, oh, this is going to have some things that my kids will want to play in it. Like I'm gonna have a look. I'm gonna give this a try, which they might be put off if it was more kind of. I'm going to say it is overtly mathematical, right? You've definitely put the word math on the cover, but at the same time, they're like, how much maths can there be in like noughts and crosses or tic-tac-toe? Like what, how difficult can that possibly get? I'm going to give it a go, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah. And that is, I think, to circle back to the audience question, that's the book I have that probably best suits my multiple audiences, maybe. It's one where... it's very kid friendly. I think that's one where, as I was writing it, I was conscious of the fact that this was going to be a book that was a lot of the readers maybe were going to be 8 years old. And so whereas I would be willing in my earlier books to kind of sprinkle in, that was my third book that I did. And so earlier books, you'll find the occasional damn or like the occasional 4-letter word for dramatic effect. I'm not someone who swears a lot, but I'm trying to write comic books. These are kind of humor books. So I'm trying to throw in some, if that's the right word to get the laugh, I'll do it. And then in that book, I was like, no, I actually don't. I'd like this to be a little more kid friendly, so I try to keep all the language and the examples a little more 8-year-old accessible. Whereas in my first book, which does have a lot of 9 and 10-year-old readers, I think it surprises me that it does, because my choices of chapters were not remotely picked with that audience in mind. There's like a chapter about weird insurance schemes, all these things that Lloyd's will do, where they'll insure you against alien abduction, or they'll insure you, I don't know, against the birth of twins, when you're only expecting a single child. Or the Electoral College in the United States. Like, these aren't topics that I would have thought of as like, these are the ones that the 10-year-olds are going to love.
Yeah.
But it's I'm a teacher at heart and a teacher by background, so I think the kind of silly kid friendliness comes through.
Yeah, and to what extent are you thinking about kind of the level of maths? Because like you're not necessarily shying away from the more complex ideas in maths, but like, are you trying to make sure that everything could be understood by a kid of that age? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, although mostly so that it could be understood by a typical adult. It turns out that like the typical adult, even like a fairly well-educated, thoughtful adult, you can't really assume anything past, maybe year 8 mathematics. That's like sort of where most people's memories leave off, I think. So particularly anything that involves algebra, anything that involves sort of, needing to reason with variables and not just recognize, maybe you can look at like one equation that has variables in it, although I'd probably write out the whole word rather than a variable standing in for it. But anything beyond that, anything that involves manipulation of those algebraic expressions, it's like, no, adults don't remember that. They don't know how to do that. So I think in all my books, what I've tried to look for is what I think of as ground floor ideas. Mathematical ideas where the way to access them is not through other mathematics or through already being invested in like this or that mathematical process or question, but something that where you can come in on the ground floor through your interest in something else, through your interest in flowers or through your interest in paper. These being obviously the things people love most, flowers and paper.
Yeah, if you get some flowers wrapped in paper, that's like, oh my God.
that is it. Yeah. That's my plan for my next book.
Yeah. But yeah, and I like that because not only have you got that kind of low barrier, I guess, entry. This is a very classic education thing, but low barrier, high ceiling, right? You can start from those simple ideas, and actually there's a lot you can do with them. You can build to get to more interesting ideas as well.
Yeah, that's right. And the games book wound up being sort of a fun cheat code for this almost, because what we get to do with the game is you get to make up an arbitrary set of rules that people haven't seen before, and then, or, find a rule set out there that people haven't explored that game. And then these are brand new rules, so they're pretty simple, like a 10-year-old can get into them and start playing the game and enjoy it. But also, these rules will have logical consequences that even a sophisticated mathematician hasn't explored or thought about. So it was sort of, the games were a very easy way to get into that low floor, high ceiling space, and anybody can start playing the game. But it's of my books, it's definitely the one that when I talk to the professional mathematicians, research mathematicians, the rest of my books, they can kind of skim through and like they smile at jokes, but they know all the math that's in there. And that's the one where they're like, oh man, I lost an afternoon trying to figure out how to solve that game. Because particularly, it's not like I picked games that I knew how to solve or even that I thought were solvable. I tried to pick games that they get you into a pretty large combinatorial space, and there's not going to be some kind of simple theorem that tells you this is how to solve the game. So that one I think is my nerd snapiest book for people who know a lot of math.
Yeah, and I guess I have a slightly insider knowledge on this because I was one of the people who did this. But for that book, and I think you've done this for your more recent book as well, you kind of crowdsourced some of the insight there, right? So you had these ideas for games and these things that you wanted to put in the book, but you didn't know what it was like to play them a lot, right? There's only so much you can play the games yourself. So you did this kind of crowdsourced feedback thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was very conscious of it when I was working on that third book, the games book. My first two books were what you'd call like a reading book. Like you sit down and you read it, and there's like a couple carefully placed little puzzles in those books, but only to give you the impression that there are puzzles in the books. Really, there's two questions in each book, and they're books you just sit down and read the way you'd read any kind of popular science book. And then the games book was totally different. It was a book that you really want people to play. It's like you're gonna, every chapter is introducing a game, and I don't want people to just idly read those games and go, oh, that was fun to read about. It's meant to be played. And so I needed play testers. And actually, the online crowdsourcing was a result, as all things are, of the pandemic, where I'd been having in-person playtesting sessions, been inviting over friends so I could sort of watch them play the games and get feedback and see how they went. And then there was a novel coronavirus that emerged and started, you've heard the story. And so everything switched to online. And so I realized that actually was potentially more powerful. I took, could go recruit a list of email addresses from people who were willing to play test the games at home while they were trapped there with whoever happened to be in their house, and then get them to fill out Google Forms of with some scores as how did you like this aspect of the game, how did you like that aspect, and then a bunch of places for more detailed feedback of what was your experience like, were there any really fun moments. And yeah, that was great. That was really fun to get. Each week I could email out a game or two and get people filling out these forms. And there's a lot of quotations from those forms that are in the book. People would have fun little comments or turns of phrase or make an observation about a game that I hadn't thought of, or even if I had thought of it, they just phrased it beautifully. And it's nice to quote someone else rather than having the book just be my monologue.
Yeah, and did you get lots of good stuff from that? Was it really useful?
Yeah, no, super useful. Yeah, I mean, it both. I think in my own assessment of the games, I was going to be making both false positives and false negatives. There were some, I remember one game that I'd come across in Sid Sackson's Gamut of Games, which is sort of like a classic 1960s book by a game designer. And there's this one where you put some coins down on the table and you shift them around until they make a symmetric shape. You sort of, you put down a formation that sort of has one gap, kind of like the 15 puzzle. And then you're supposed to rearrange the coins until they form something with bilateral symmetry. which I found very aesthetically pleasing and like a really cool. I was sure that was going to be like one of the first games in the book and kind of like a featured game. And like people didn't really like it. It was like a little under constrained. It was like kind of too easy to get it to be symmetric. So then you'd want to be counting how many moves if you really wanted a meaty puzzle. But like I think maybe I'm just not very good at the 15 puzzles. So this was like a much easier version that I found very pleasing. But people who actually were familiar with these kind of sliding tasks didn't find it very interesting. So that was one that, like, for me, was a false positive. I thought it was going to be a great game, and it wasn't. And then there were some others that I thought were sort of minor games. I almost didn't even send them out. And then actually those were ones people really liked. Like those wound up being favorites in the book. Yeah, I remember one that was actually one that I designed. Most of the games in the book are not my design. There was one called Dandelions, where it's an asymmetric game where one person is planting seeds and the other person is blowing the wind that sends the dandelions across the field to fill in the rest of it. And I thought it was a limited game because you can't play it every day for a year or something. It's very far from being chess or Go. It's just like there's not that much depth to the game. Yeah. But it was sort of a pleasing mechanic, and it's a fun thing to dive into, and it sort of evokes the dandelions in the field. And so that was one of people's favorites. And since the book has been published, that's one of the ones I hear about the most when I get emails from readers. That's one that connects with people.
Yeah, I remember that. So, I now have memories of playing that, yeah.
Yeah. So this was good. And I think this is probably true with any act of writing that I've done, that like I'm going to get false positives and false negatives. There are blog posts where I'm like, I nailed it. I nailed this topic, and just crickets. It's like not an interesting blog post. And others I'm like, oh, I wanted to do a blog post this week, and I toss something off, and it turns out to be people's favorite thing I've done that month. So to some extent, it always helps to have readers and people giving you feedback, but especially for games where there's so much going to be happening on the other end of the book, at the other, in that other room where I don't get to be, that I really need some feedback in advance.
Yeah.
What's the experience going to be like?
I think that's part of it, yeah, that you're kind of putting this out there and you want people to interact with it. But, everyone comes to this with a different background, different approach to playing these games, different level of both, maths intuition and also determination to win the game. So, like, there's only you can only do your kind of take on it. And it's a really nice form of kind of audience feedback, which I guess is rare for a writer of books, right? To actually get specifically messages from your readers going, oh, this is what I thought of this particular idea. And you can then even, as you say, put it in the book.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I think it was, it's funny because I didn't do anything like that for my fourth book. It was not, wasn't that kind of book. It was much more a kind of reading book again. And I think that was just a completely foolish own goal on my part. I think I should have continued to be like bringing in readers to give feedback on whatever I'm creating. Book writing is a very slow process, having, done a few years of writing online where you get very rapid feedback, and now a few years of book writing where it's a very slow production cycle. There's a lot of sitting alone at your computer. It's good to be in dialogue with the actual people who you're trying to be in dialogue with.
Yeah, I think there is definitely that with most books. You just kind of launch it off into the world, and then, maybe someone will talk to you at an event or whatever about what they thought of it, or you might get an email or something, but it's not that same level at all of, comments under a blog post or, interaction immediately, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And I think the books I've been working on too lend themselves to that kind of feedback. When I think of people who write literary fiction or memoir, it's something that sort of people who are, writers with a capital W. I think this kind of crowdsourcing process tends to make less sense for them because what you're looking for is something coherent and complete and with a particular aesthetic vision, and you might not know you've got the right pieces in place until it's really been polished up. So really what you want there are like a few trusted readers that you're going to, a handful of people who you can really rely on. But my books are very modular. It's like if this game doesn't work, I can swap it out for a different game. And yeah, as you were saying before, like the amount of work I'm expecting that person, the reader, to do on the other end of the book is much larger than, reading a memoir. Reading a memoir, I sort of know what the experience is going to be. You're gonna read it. You're gonna think some thoughts. You're gonna go away. Whereas a game book, like you're gonna go off and then play this game with your sister, or your brother, and it's gonna, I don't know, like there's hours of time potentially there that I don't really know what you're doing. You could be going off in a totally different direction than I anticipated.
And I think there's possibly also an aspect of ego for some writers that they're just like, how could anyone possibly tell me how to write this book? This is just my creation that I'm going to craft and, and send out there for people to enjoy. But I think with something like this, as you say, that there's an element of the enjoyment of the game that happens entirely outside of your hands, right? It's the way that people play it and the games that they have and the interactions they have based on it. And the amount that you put in is just kind of, here's this structure, here's these rules, and whatever commentary you give around it. But that part of it is for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, there's also I think there's the perpetual war between my ego, which would like things to be exactly perfect the way I've sculpted them, and I'm going to give you this beautiful polished thing that came out of my mind, and then the actual empirical experience I have, which is that often doesn't work, and it turns out to be bad. So yeah, in teaching is also a good discipline in this, where every teacher knows you can have the most gorgeous lesson that you've planned, and the most perfect explanation that you're very satisfied with, and then the human beings in the room, it doesn't help them and it doesn't work for them. And then you can kind of cling to but in the abstract, this would have been a great explanation. And it's yes, but if it doesn't explain anything to anyone, then it's sort of hard to, it's not clear what ground you're standing on to defend it.
And I think there's also an aspect of this is what maths is like, that there are these ideas and these notions and games or whatever there are, but actually, a lot of the richness of it is in the way that people interact with it. And, a particular puzzle or a game or something might mean something totally different to one person than it does to someone else. So, it's really nice that you give people the freedom to sort of do that for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And also the audience problem, again, I might be picturing a slightly different reader or a slightly different audience member than the ones who are actually going to be picking up the book. And so that's why it helps to kind of send some messages out in bottles into the internet and get some people to give feedback on these things to see, it is the audience member I'm picturing actually a good stand-in for the reader that's going to wind up picking up the book.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting the impression you're doing this again for another book now. This is another...
That's right, yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I'm working on a book called Puzzle Planet is the tentative title.
Right.
It's sort of a companion to the games book, hopefully a smaller sibling. I'll try to have the trim size of the hardcover be, something that one human can lift, ideally. A coffee table book, maybe in the sense that it goes on your coffee table rather than that you put it in your living room as a coffee table and just put your cups right on it. So it's a book of puzzles, which... there's a reason I did the games book first, which is that I think it was probably easier to write. Games are just everybody loves a game. Games are fun. Puzzles people also love, but the way they love movies or something, everybody's got their particular taste, and it's very personal. It's very, people, and if it's not your kind of movie, people get very snippy about it. So I'm finding that this feedback is taking a little more patience from me to be okay, right, it's okay that these people have different tastes than I do. This puzzle I thought was great, they don't like it. That's okay. If the readers don't like it, that's fair. I think the games, if you just look on sort of your 5-point Likert scale, I think the games just came out with higher numbers probably on average than the puzzles.
Right.
Although, actually that's probably true across the board, but some of the favorite puzzles are... Yeah, actually, as I think about this, I have to go back and look at my old spreadsheet. But actually, I think the favorite puzzles are out-competing the favorite games.
Right.
Which would probably fit with my puzzles just being kind of higher variance.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you've got data analysis on this. This is something that's...
tons,
it's right. Stats that you can now play with, yeah.
Yes. Oh, man, I mean, it brings up a lot of, really interesting statistical questions for me. So I've got, to give the sort of background, I've got, something like 70 puzzles that I wanted to play test. And many of them are kind of multi-part, it's sort of I've grouped it as one puzzle, but actually it's sort of introducing a sort of Sudoku-like challenge, and then there's 4 or 6 in that type that would appear in the book. And so I sent these out to people and asked a few questions. I wanted to know, the ultimate question was sort of overall, how much do you like it? And I gave a 5-point scale, which I think statisticians will tell you there's not a huge amount of psychological validity to this, particularly when you start averaging people's numbers. What does that really mean? But I think I sort of know I think we all know what a 5-point Likert scale means. 5 means I loved it. 4 means, I liked it. It was good. 3 is a shrug. 3 is it was fine. It was good. And then 2 and 1 are that was bad. I don't like it. And so it's even though in theory this could differ from person to person, and some people have higher standards, lower standards, whatever, some people are more generous with their 5, some people are very stingy. You get an impression, especially if you get a large enough sample size. So I've been sending out the puzzles. I took my 70 puzzles, broke them into 10 batches or so, because I wanted to be able to iterate, and then got, 300 or so playtesters to sign up, sent them each one of the batches, and then looked at the feedback, and now I'm on a second round. I sent additional batches to to everyone. And one like immediate statistical question that arose is how do you weigh the number of ratings versus the number on the ratings, right? This is like if you're looking on, I don't know, Goodreads or something, do you want a book that's been rated 8,000 times or a book that's been rated 180 times but it has a higher score? It's like not totally obvious when you're sampling from this large world. Yeah, so I don't know. So I'm trying in my head to I could probably come up with some kind of, I'm sure there's a statistical method out there to, adjust for, you could easily adjust for sort of the regression to the mean that you get if you assume that these are being randomly assigned. And so you might get, something with fewer ratings might have a very abnormally high or abnormally low score just because of a small sample size.
Like he's sending each puzzle to the same number of people, but not getting as many responses for some, because that's also information, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, no, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's not right. It's not just a random sample. There's a selection effect.
There's a secret sixth rating, which is I didn't even bother to fill in the thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I didn't try that one. And it's hard to know what to do with that. Some of the puzzles are obviously easier to tackle and some of them are obviously more involved. So if people aren't, like there's one in particular that's a sort of Sudoku style puzzle where you've got these waffles that you're decorating. So these grids, which are waffles, and you're supposed to decide where on the grid the blueberries go. And it's a pretty involved puzzle. And the people who have done it love it. They think it's great. It's like one of my highest rated puzzles. And also, it's only got like about a third as many ratings as some of the other puzzles.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with that? And then on the other hand, also like thinking about it for a book, what do you want to include in the book? Do I want to include the puzzles that are so enticing everyone tries them? And then they all go, yeah, that was fine. Or do I want to include puzzles that are less attempted, but the people who do attempt them think they're great?
Yeah.
Like a book is inherently a kind of communication for a niche audience, right? Like when you create a book, you're not trying to write it for everyone because people don't buy books. Like a book is a special thing. It's got to be something that's special for the people picking it up. Yeah. So anyway, so mostly this data has been good for generating lots of unanswerable questions about the philosophy of such data gathering. But it's also been very useful for seeing which sorts of puzzles are appealing to people, and then seeing their particular feedback. There are at least a couple puzzles that the first round of feedback I got, people had a confusion or it became clear from their feedback, like I hadn't explained one of the constraints clearly.
Yeah.
And so there's at least 2 or 3 puzzles that on the second round of feedback, the sort of scores shot up for it because I was able to make adjustments based on the first round, and then people actually liked it once they saw what the puzzle was.
Yeah, it is incredible how much you can think that a set of instructions is coherent and completely, rock solid and absolutely unambiguous, and then someone will come back and say, wait, you mean this? And you're like, oh, I didn't, but I see now why you thought I meant that. And this is part of the process of writing instructions for anything, right? Is just and we've done puzzles for things where you're really constrained on space, so you've only got a few words to describe it, and then it's really challenging to actually get a description in there that conveys everything without being ambiguous. And obviously, if you've got mathematicians looking at it, they will find every possible way to misinterpret what you've written. But I guess the fact that you've got people literally telling you that, and they're in the mindset of I'm here to test this puzzle, they will be looking for things like that, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. And in fact, some of the most useful ones are people who, in their field, they'll say, I almost thought you meant this, but obviously that wasn't it. And it's like, no, that is actually what I meant. I've had quite a few comments of that form. Where there was a river crossing puzzle that I did that was sort of I just gave a new kind of theme over the top of an old river crossing puzzle. Not the old river crossing puzzle. That one is from the 9th century, and at this point, I think people have pretty much seen the thing.
It's been done.
The goats and the cabbage. It's been done. But some other ones that were invented in the 19th century that most people have seen. Anyway, I've got one or two puzzles like that I'm deciding whether to include in the book that I've rethemed. And, there's one where it's like, can you have these people together for just a moment when they're getting out of the boat on the far side of the river? And the answer is no, you shouldn't, because then the puzzle's really easy.
Right.
And so it needs to be the case that no, even for a moment, even when you're just getting out of the boat and the boat is just parking for a moment on that side of the river, you can't have this combination of people. But then, that's one where several, I'd say the majority of people who have done that one, who have commented on, have been like, yeah, it's a really easy puzzle. I assume this is the rule, right? It's like, no, that wasn't the rule. But it's also, like with teaching, it's like, as a teacher, I always wish that I could just teach and that were somehow independent of the experience of the students. Like I could just do a great job. It's like, nobody learned anything, but I did a great job. It's like, that's not teaching. And similarly, that's not book writing. Like if I'm writing a book for a totally imaginary audience that never picks up the book or possibly is born or exists. So that's not clear that I've done what I've set out to do.
Yeah, I guess, that's the job of communication, I guess, is to go to where people are and make sure that they're comfortable with what you're saying and that they understand it and follow it. And it's not easy, is it? I guess that's the...
No, yeah. Right, no, it can be, right, it can certainly be frustrating when it's like when you have that satisfaction of having made a thing you're really proud of, and then it turns out it doesn't do what you wanted it to do. That can be frustrating. Part of the reason actually that I think this process has worked okay is I'm sending out so many puzzles. I had this batch of 70 before I got them out there, that when some of them flop, that's okay, because there's others that are also doing well. If they were all flopping, I think that would be pretty discouraging. I think my editor would probably be disappointed to hear, having paid me in advance on this book. It's like, oh, actually, it turns out nobody wants any of these puzzles. They're all terrible. Like, that's not true. So I can handle the disappointments, because there are some that are, people are liking better than I thought they might, or that are, going just as well as I hoped they would.
And are you planning to whittle that down to, like, how many you're going to fit in the final thing?
Yeah, what I'd like to write on the cover is that there are 101 puzzles, because that's a nice number. So I need to somehow put in a number of puzzles that I can count in such a way that it is 101.
What's that in binary? 5.
In binary? It's already in binary. I'm only doing 5 puzzles, actually. Yeah, that's right, 5 puzzles.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds fantastic. And I say, like, I got the impression you were doing this. What I meant was I got the email asking for people to test the puzzles. I've been far too busy to join in and get on that. But I imagine the people who are doing are having a fun time with it. And when they see the book come out, it'd be really nice to feel like they've contributed to that as well and kind of made it what it is.
No, for sure. And I've been going, people are saying really, really interesting things in the surveys too. So I'm trying to bold some of the feedback. I feel that sometimes people get very interesting feedback, which convinces me I should cut that puzzle. And then it's like, oh, sorry, you gave a great quote, but I can't use it in the book now because you convinced me not to include the puzzle. But that's okay. And there's some of the puzzles. A lot of the ones, actually, this might just be the kind of hardcore group I've recruited, but they don't like anything they've seen before. So if there's like a classic puzzle, you rearrange the coins, turn the pyramid upside down, they're just like, it's like me trying to take a shot in basketball and they're just slapping it down. It's like them getting blocked. It's like, no, that's we've seen that before. You gotta impress us with something new. Yeah, so it's been very good feedback, and it's been a nice group of people to get to hear from.
Yeah, well, it sounds like an absolutely fantastic process. And if you're now this is just how you're going to write all your books from now on, I guess. Just crowdsource everything and make sure it's just right.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think we can put links in the show notes to all of the books you've done so far,
cool.
And anything else you want to let people know about. But it's been really nice to chat to you, and we look forward to seeing it when it comes out.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
If you want to get involved in Ben's new book, Puzzle Planet, you can visit Ben's website at mathwithbaddrawings.com. Up next on the Talking Maths in Public podcast, the UK now has not one but 2 hands-on maths discovery centres, one in Leeds and now a new one in London. I chatted to Max Hughes and Harry Krishnan about their roles as the managers of the 2 centres. I'm joined by Max and Harry, who are both the heads of UK hands-on maths discovery centres. And we're here to kind of chat about the story of this and how that's gone and how that's come to be and what is a hands-on maths discovery centre. So first of all, if you want to tell us a bit about yourself. So first of all, Max, what's your background?
Yeah, so I'm Max. I am currently the manager of MathsWorld London, and I suppose my background's in maths and in maths communication. So grew up in Bognor Regis on the south coast, and then headed to Leeds for my maths degree, where I was interested in kind of doing maths communication. In 2019, I went to my first Talking Maths in Public, and the rest is history.
Excellent. And Harry, do you want to just say a bit about yourself?
I am a little bit different than Max. I studied engineering in my undergraduate and also in my postgraduate. But when I joined Math City, I get to explore the whole new maths communication side of the whole STEM. And I really enjoyed it. Currently, I am working as a manager at Math City. So it's good going so far.
Yeah, well, I think this is what we're here to dig into. So I guess the origins of this are Math City was the first of these centres that existed, and that's in Leeds. And I guess, Max, you were the first person out of the 3 of us here to be involved in that. Do you want to tell us a bit about the history of that and kind of how that came to be?
Yeah, Math City. So it was started long before I got involved. So I think the first kind of people who were interested in it were Jeff Wayne and Professor Margaret Brown worked together to set up the charity, which I think was registered as a charity in around 2013. So Jeff had been involved with the Pop Maths Roadshow in like 1992. So that was like 8 years before I was born. And then eventually, 2013, the charity was set up, the business was set up, and things started happening. I've got some kind of old pieces of paper here. There's a parliamentary reception in 2014 where, I don't know, Matt Parker and Rob Easterway and folk were there hosting things, who are friends of the podcast. And so, that was set up. They did lots of different things, but it was almost this kind of perfect primordial soup waiting for a spark of life to happen. And I think that spark of life, lots of people would say, came in 2019 when Dr. Katie Shiko was appointed the CEO, who's kind of got this perfect mix of everyone and started setting up the centre, in which got to around 2020, and another roadshow was about to be set up, but I think they were already in maybe Winchester, I want to say, to have this roadshow of touring exhibits, and then 2020 happened. So that didn't go ahead, which and because of 2020 though, like lots of shopping centres had really bad business. No one was going into the city centres anymore because there was a big pandemic happening, and a space became available in Trinity, Leeds, which was a permanent space where Math City could open, and that's when I started being involved as a student. I was an explainer when we first opened.
Fantastic. So what is Math City, I guess, because we keep talking about this, but if someone hasn't been there, what's the kind of experience that people can expect to have there?
So it's a hands-on maths discovery centre. Every exhibit is, as I say, it's the home of hands-on maths, we call ourselves. We've got different zones focusing on code breaking, problem solving, mind and machine. We've got an Our Chaotic Earth section in our Leeds centre. So everything's hands-on, interactive, and good fun. We want to show that maths is a fun thing that you can explore.
Yeah, and I guess, this is an existing established thing that you have science centres that are kind of hands-on interactive places where you can go and investigate things and play with these cool exhibits and demonstrations. And I guess this is kind of a maths version of that.
That's what I tell to people, that over the phone, if I am explaining to someone about Math City, like, have you been to Wonder Lab in the Science Museum groups? Which is everywhere in the country. There's one in Glasgow, London, even in Manchester, and one in Bradford, I believe. Easy ways. Most of the people have experienced the Science Discovery Centre part of it. And I would say Math City is purely focused on mathematics, even though there are some other science elements to it, but what we wanted to emphasize is maths is fun. You can also interact with maths. As for people say that, what is interaction in maths? But yeah, that is. Come and visit us to see what we have here.
Yeah, well, exactly. And people think of maths as being whatever it is they learned in a classroom at school. It's partly about kind of opening that up for them a bit and showing them that there's more to it than just sort of sitting down and doing a calculation on a piece of paper.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's new for the UK, but it's not new for kind of the world. There's been centres like that. So we are very much modelled on things like Mathematicum in Germany, which opened in 2002, MoMath in 2012. So we're the first people to do it here, but it's very much a worldwide phenomenon that we're almost slightly behind on.
Yeah, I mean, if New York can have MoMath, we should definitely be able to have something in the UK, because the maths communication scene here is pretty strong, and there's lots of people who'd be interested in this. And as you say, it's been a long, sort of slow process to put this together. But yeah, it's fantastic that Math City was established in Leeds. And I guess you say it was originally in Trinity Shopping Centre. It was there for several years, I believe, and then it's moved to a new location now.
Yes, that's where Harry gets involved.
Yeah, so Harry, tell us about the new Math City, I guess. Yeah.
As Max said, we had to move from Trinity to this new place. Katie Chico has been instrumental in finding this new location and getting us all moved to this place. Max as well. We had quite a bit of a up and down when we were moving. There's a lot of difficulties in moving the large exhibits, but we had fun.
Yeah, and I guess the new centre is kind of it's not within a shopping centre like the other one was. It's more of a kind of separate building on its own.
It is more of a separate building. We are in a ground floor of an office building. It's called the Zurich House. What people see outside is just an office block. But when you come inside, you would experience all this jaw-dropping exhibits that we have available.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult because you end up with you've got stuff in the windows. I guess like I've been outside the building and seen what it looks like, and you've kind of got signs in the windows that say this is Math City. There's lots of pictures of shapes and cool things. But if you're not kind of sure what that means, I guess it's slightly harder to sort of just drop in. But I guess equally in the shopping centre location, it was a kind of a shop front that just said Math City on it. And if you didn't know what that was, maybe you wouldn't know what was inside. But I guess there's an element of that kind of wants to invite people to explore. I guess if you hear the word Math City, it's quite a nice name for it because there's definitely maths going on, but it's also some kind of attraction, right? It's like it's a visitor attraction that involves maths somehow. But yeah, so what kind of things do you have in the current centre? Like what's your favourite bits in there that people can come and play with?
So we have like little puzzle things that on the face of it seems very, very difficult. It all based on a tetrahedron shape, whether you have little connected ball things that you need to place as a tetrahedron, or like a little shapes that you need to place as a tetrahedron. Right. It sounds simpler. When you look at the objects, everyone finds it like, how does it happen? How does it happen? And I have this like little explanation that on the side of that table of puzzles, we have a ring of fire where we have a tetrahedron acrylic thing, which I can show them how this shape could be made into this little puzzles. And once I show them, everyone is like, oh, that's fantastic. How do people think about it? I'm like, yeah, that's also maths if you want to think deeply about it. That's one of my favorite things, like explaining things and also people looking at it and coming up with the different solutions. Like, I don't give everyone the clues, but I would like to see how different people think with that object.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice thing to explore because, maths is about this sort of thinking in ways that help you to solve problems and that help you to kind of break things down and understand them. And it is really nice that you've got both this object that people can sort of pick up and play with, and they don't, there's no... apart from you've got to try and make this shape, there's no instructions about how to do that, so they can just try it and move it around and do different things. But then you've also got this nice analogy for it that is actually a separate exhibit. So the ring of fire, I guess, is this sort of circular hole with lasers across it that you can place an object in and it will draw a line that's sort of almost the cross section of that object. And if you have a transparent tetrahedron, I guess, you can really see those cross sections and see what shapes you get when you do that. And it kind of shows that connection. I think that's really nice that people can sort of see these connections between different bits of maths in a really visual and hands-on way. Because there is something really powerful about interacting with something, getting hands-on and actually doing it yourself, rather than just being told something like this. So that's really, really nice.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So around about the same time that Math City moved from one bit of Leeds to a slightly different bit of Leeds, it's kind of the same distance from the train station, but in a different direction, right? It's not far. But at the same time that move was happening, there was also another thing going on down in London. So Max, do you want to tell us about MathsWorld and how that came about?
Yeah, that was a very busy couple of weeks of my life. I was helping Harry move everything from the Leeds centre to the new Leeds centre, and then a week later I moved down to London to, there's a railway arch in Southwark to set this place up. So I arrived, there was a bunch of kind of exhibits all in their packaging, and it was my job to turn this kind of empty railway arch into a working centre, which was very exciting. So this is MathsWorld. It's 2 stories, so slightly bigger than our current centre in Leeds, and it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, some Talking Maths in Public members will have been to the London Centre as well. But it is, there's a lot of there's some things in common with what's going on in Leeds, but there's also some different exhibits that you don't have in both places. And so what's your favourite thing in MathsWorld, Max?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, we deliberately tried to pick like everyone's favourite exhibits from Leeds, so we have them in both centres. So there's the giant bubble, which everyone loves, where you can go inside a bubble which makes the shape of a catenoid. The sandpit, interactive sandpit, is always good fun, and then some of the puzzles. Then my favourite new exhibit might be the elliptical billiards table, where you can. There's 2 points on that, where you can always hit 1 point where if you hit it off the side from the other, which is very cool. And the whole code breaking section is a really nice zone where we've connected it all together with this board of animals you need to find. So I like we're very much starting to try some real cohesive zones in the centre as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's nice because then there's a bunch of things that are all sort of related to each other that people can go around and do them all, and it feels like a kind of a process, I guess. A thing that I'm wondering about is what is it like for kind of from your perspective, I guess, as the person who's running it. What do visitors how do they interact with it? Like, do they come in and try and do everything, or do they just are they a bit cautious about it, or what's your experience of that?
It really does range compared on depending on the visitor, but I think, especially with school groups, you get kids run in and try and just jump from one exhibit to another really quickly. And then when they actually realise they've got a bit of time, they settle down and actually give the exhibits the time they deserve. So I think sometimes there's lots of excitement when you come in the door. There's lots of colours. There's a big dodecahedron that's just bright and colourful in the entrance. So you get very excited. And then I think sometimes it takes a few minutes just to calm down and be like, this is actually really cool if I focus on the maths as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And that kind of idea of making it very big and visual and interactive, I imagine that, as Harry was saying, there's some people who are not kind of tying that in with their experience of what maths is. Like, it doesn't really feel like you're doing maths while you're there because you're just playing and having fun with stuff. Do you often get people saying this isn't maths?
We do. I think Harry will probably get the same in Leeds as well, but you kind of have to justify to students.
Yeah, exactly.
It's annoying. It's a kind of frustrating question, but it's a nice question because it allows us to answer exactly why everything's to do with maths. So it's a good entry point for a conversation. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, potentially. So you're expanding that perception of people of what maths is, but you're also providing a really enjoyable experience that they can then mentally associate with the idea of maths as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a question whether we call ourselves like MathsWorld as well, because we've got maths in the name. It might turn off some people who don't like maths, but also I think it's really important that the people here explicitly know that they've been having fun with maths, and that's kind of in the title. So there's a bit of a balance between whether you have maths straight there in the name, but I think we've fallen on the right side just to make it as explicit as possible that the people here are having fun with maths.
Yeah, and that's absolutely wonderful. So I guess there'll be a difference in potentially scale between the two centres that, because London is a much bigger city, I guess, and there's a lot of visitors there, a lot of tourists. I'm assuming you've got a very different scale of kind of footfall and numbers and that kind of thing between the two.
Yeah, I think for the London Centre we're getting about 5 times, maybe even more by the end of the year, as many visitors. So we've been open for 7 months and had about 40,000 visitors. I think when I was manager of Maths City in Leeds, we were getting about 10,000 a year. So 40,000 in 7 months is a big difference, and it's a very stressful difference.
I can imagine, yeah.
It is still the same, right, at Maths City, around 10 to 15,000 per year. But we are happy that we are still keeping the numbers same, even though we moved from a busy footfall mall to a separate building. It's been going good.
And I guess, are you still, because I know you do a lot of kind of extra events for things like half term to try and encourage people to come in. Is that something you're still doing in the new centre as well?
Yes, we are still doing plenty of new extra activities just for a half term, whether it's Halloween theme half term, where we showed how bats would navigate. Even last week, when it was a May half term, we got an external person coming in and doing a giant drawing machine where you can sketch yourself into a tiny A4 sheet paper, which is quite nice. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. It's not what you see everywhere. It's a pretty unique thing. We are happy that we had that for the week.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And I guess you have similar things at MathsWorld in London, like Max?
Yeah, similar, but actually Harry's been doing some very exciting things because he's got this engineering background. So all of the October stuff was all kind of, he's 3D printing some very cool bits and pieces. So I'm jealous of what's going on in Leeds at the moment. But we've also been able to introduce a series of Lates events in London just because there's a bit more of that kind of culture, there's a bigger population to get people through the doors. So once a month we're getting a maths communicator in to do a long kind of 1 hour talk, and then people can explore the centre as well. And that can an opportunity to get some adults in the centre without any like toddlers running about.
Yeah, and there's that breadth of it as well, that like I know, small kids will find it exciting to go and play with these things, but also as an adult, it's also quite great to just kind of go around and you can kind of quite contemplatively almost explore these ideas, because there's no, like, it's not like a talk where you're being told things or a TV program you're watching where you kind of keep up with it. It's just you and a piece of maths that you can interact with.
This experience, I'm pretty sure Max has that as well, is how like they come in as a family. They thought it's for the kids, Math City, it's for the kids, and the kids gonna go enjoy, and we're gonna be sitting on our phone in the corner. But that's not what happened. They come in and they got distracted by these awesome things, and I'm gonna do this, and kids will be doing something else. And when the kid is stuck with something, they will come up to the parents and pull their hands. You have to come with me and help me out. Or like, oh no, I'm doing this thing. I can't come right now. Like, okay. It's that kind of things everyone get to enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's really nice to hear. So I guess, other things that I'm thinking about that people might be interested to know. So I guess you're both kind of the manager of these centres. And then underneath you have, I guess, a team of explainers that work to sort of talk to people that come in. Like, to what extent are you and or the explainers involved in, designing new ideas and kind of creating new stuff and new exhibits to go in the centres?
We've got a bit of a say. So our content manager for MathsWorld UK, so the overall charity, so that's both the Leeds and London centres, is James Grime, who lots of people might know from Numberphile. And so he does lots of kind of the exhibits, as well as writes all the panels. So if you're reading something in MathsWorld or Math City, it's written by James. That kind of, he works alongside, because we're a charity as well, we've got this kind of board of different kind of trustees. We've got a programming group as well that goes by. So it's a big cumulative decision with everyone from kind of the ground upwards. And that kind of that panel of trustees has got years and years of experience and in mass communication. So it's a collaborative effort.
Fantastic. And Harry, do you get to feed into anything at all? I mean, I've heard about your wonderful engineering input.
Well, so as soon as I joined, Katie, she goes either like she wants to get some of my expertise in engineering into new exhibits. So we started a separate group for engineering exhibits, and we've been talking to Royal Society of Engineers and people who are part of Royal Society of Engineers who are currently working in industries to come up with different ideas that we can implement in Math City. It's ongoing at the moment. There's been few meetings, and I also have asked my enablers if they have any ideas to input as well. So just so that they feel that they have some input into the new exhibits.
Yeah, that's fantastic as well, because I guess the explainers are kind of on the ground, interacting with the public in a very, face-to-face kind of way, but also them feeling like they're involved as well. I guess helps them to feel a bit more like they have agency and that they're helping to create this experience for people. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole charity, everyone is working together to show people that maths is fun. Everyone gets to involve, and that's a good thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to both of you for chatting to us. And if people want to go and visit MathsWorld or Math City, we'll put links in the show notes under the podcast to the websites for both and to any of the other things that we've mentioned. But yeah, I really hope that these things continue to go on and get bigger and get more popular and provide this fantastic experience for people.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we hope so too.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as well.
Thanks again to Max and Harry for chatting to us about getting hands-on with maths. That's all for this episode of the Talking Maths in Public podcast. Head to talkingmathsinpublic.uk/podcast for more episodes, to suggest your ideas for future podcast segments, and to find out more about the TMIP network. Tune in to the next episode for more mathematical communication inspiration.
The Talking Maths in Public podcast is presented and edited by Katie Steckles and funded by the International Centre for the Mathematical Sciences. The music is For Her by Liderk on Pixabay.